And another question that needs to be asked with all of it is this the government's role in the first place? Is it something that government does better or can do better or should do in the first, I mean, again, should do, that the private sector can't do?
You can roughly locate any community in the world somewhere along a scale running all the way from democracy to despotism. One to the democracy end, another somewhere in the middle, and a third. A community rates low on an information scale when the press, radio, and other channels of communication are controlled by only a few people, and when citizens have to accept what they're told. In communities of this kind, despotism stands a good chance. See how a community trains its teachers.
Bear this in mind. Young people cannot be trusted to form their own opinions. This business about open-mindedness is nonsense. It's a waste of time trying to teach students to think for themselves. It's our job to tell them.
And when teachers put such training into practice, despotism stands a good chance. These children are being taught to accept uncritically whatever they're told. Questions are not encouraged.
How can you ask such a question? Have you got a textbook?
Yes, ma'am.
Does it say here that our law courts are always just?
Yes, ma'am.
Then how dare you question the fact? Sit down.
And so we aren't surprised when...
But it must be true. I saw it in this book right here.
Education is one of the most difficult issues that we face because most of us believe fundamentally two things. Education is the means by which access to the American dream is controlled. So the American dream means that if all of us work hard, we can make a living. And if we work hard and we're creative, we can not only make a living, we can become rich. But usually only through education do we have access to that. And so many people who would say, you know, I worry about government providing things, will say, oh yes, but government should provide education. It's not clear that A leads to B leads to C there. Now, one thing government could do is provide financing. That is, poor people might not be able to fund the education of their children, so we could have vouchers. Those vouchers then would go to all parents, and parents would make their own choices. There's no reason that government has to provide education. It might have to fund it. It might not even have to go that far. We've established this system where we're way down on one end. Almost all government is not just funded, but also provided by government as a monopoly provider. You don't have an alternative unless you're rich. Rich people have choices now. So it's hard to imagine a worse system. It's only the poor people who don't have choices. It's only the poor people who have to send their children to third-rate high schools with the roof falling in and the plumbing not working and having to follow the school bus in order to make sure it doesn't break down so they get their kids to school.
If you want a certified mechanic or a certified plumber, you can use one of them and pay more, or you can go to the guy down the street who you know does a good job, and you get good results from there because you know what you want. You want your car to run right, you want your sink to drain, and you don't want water spurting all over your house. And with education, we know that we want educated children. We want children who can get by in the world and do and help the rest of us out through comparative advantage, using what they're good at and interacting with others in a positive way and being good citizens. You know, and there are ways that you can accomplish that regardless of how you achieve, and so how you achieve those results isn't as important, and that's and so the education system is more focused on how you achieve something rather than what you're actually achieving.
Federal dollars, both for the school system and the highway system, are a kind of siren. So the myth of Ulysses sailing in his boat past the island of the sirens. where if you heard the song, you would inexorably be drawn towards the island, your ship would wreck on the rocks. So what the federal government, there's no such thing as federal dollars, let's remember that. What it is dollars that the federal government has taken from us and is now they're willing to give some of them back if they can attach certain strings. So it is true that we struggle then and try to get back some of our money, some of that highway funds, and in this case, some of those education funds. Far better to get rid of the taxes, get rid of the programs, and let us keep both the dollars and the decision-making responsibility ourselves in the first place. So I think the federal, so-called federal education programs are disastrous. There's no reason the federal government should be involved at the local level, except possibly for block funding with no strings. If you really think there's a problem that there's some areas that are so poor, I could imagine a federally funded voucher program. Because there, the federal government does have economies of scale in the collection of taxation. But there's always going to be strings. It's irresistible.
I think the only way they're going to fix the public school is with vouchers. And I don't even want to see them give those to homeschoolers. I would rather them give it to the absolute poorest part of the community and say, here's your $13,000 from Wake County that's non-negotiable, but you can take this to any school that you want to take it to. And it seems like everywhere they've tried vouchers in any community, particularly going into the poorest part and giving them that money, that the results have been remarkable.
If you think government does a good job in providing education, then let's have public schools compete with other kinds of schools, and people will still send them there. In a voucher program, if I choose, and one of the things I would do as governor is implement a voucher program. If I choose to send my kids to public schools because they're excellent, great. Most of them are not excellent. I think that's the real explanation for why many public school officials are worried about competition, is they know that the public school systems in which they try to implement their own conception of social engineering, of all sorts of different kinds of diversity of education, non-diversity of viewpoint, really only one particular viewpoint designed to indoctrinate kids, not really educate, but to indoctrinate. They know that that won't hold up in a competitive system, and so they fight tooth and nail to prevent any alternatives from being offered.
When does the government have a prerogative to come in a regulatory sense, let's say, to protect consumers? So we banned DDT because we saw it was destructive to the environment.
Right. We banned DDT, and it led to a ban worldwide, and so it led to more mosquitoes in Africa, and it led to more people with malaria. Is DDT better or worse than malaria?
Worse. Better.
One thing I liked about that poster is the typo, Flying Blue Day Way. And it's Flying Blue Jay Way is the song, and so sort of sneaky.
So if you want to ask about those two.
And ask you about those.
Well, one at a time, will you, man?
He said that.